ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. Christian A. Guzman alongside Steve Heller and Mike Ostrowski, and a special guest this week, John Senego from our friends at newsposition.com, as we react live to the NCAA selection show. We are recording this at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, May 5th, after Cinco de Mayo to everyone celebrating. And what better way to celebrate than a bracket reveal for both the men's and the women's? First time we get to say that in quite some time, because the men have not been in this process for the past couple of years.
That's right. First time in 3 years. Good to be back for both. Exciting times. Looking forward to what should be a pretty good bracket reveal, seeding-wise for Syracuse tonight. So, exciting night.
Yeah, I think both the early exits on both conference tournaments for the men and the women likely shouldn't play too much into this from what I can gather. Mostly reading your stuff, John, but
yeah.
Oh, well.
The ACC tournament at this point, with the lack of an auto bid, is essentially glorified scrimmages, since those games really, really didn't matter, especially with all the teams participating locked for the NCAA tournament, essentially.
Yeah. Yep. Just, I mean, it's all good, really, because you just end up helping your RPI and strength of schedule, or just help to keep it at the top by playing the games, even if you get crushed by Duke. So it works out nicely.
You kind of saw the writing on the wall there when Will Mark got pulled after the first quarter. Kind of like, hey, we've lost this game. Let's not risk any chance of our starting goalkeeper getting injured for the eventual NCAA tournament, which will, of course, start next week. But right now, the women's bracket is getting revealed right now on ESPN. They're starting, of course, with the upper left region, which is the number one seed, and of course, the reigning national champions, the Northwestern Wildcats, your reigning Big Ten champions as well, are back as the number one seed. We're expecting Syracuse to be a 3 or a 4 seed. And we are also expecting that for the men's, which is also great because that's the first time in a while we get to say that both teams are not only hosting a NCAA tournament game, but both teams being a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is kind of where you want Syracuse lacrosse to be.
100%. Yep. I mean, top 4. That's the goal. You get guaranteed home games all the way through until the Final Four that way. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a fun spring for Syracuse outside of any overtime games. Other than that, it's been fantastic.
And of course, the Syracuse women's team, like you said, let's focus on the women's team right now, since the women's bracket show is being the one that is being shown to the masses. The only losses on the Syracuse side of their schedule go to, of course, the reigning national champions, the Northwestern Wildcats, the reigning national runners-up in the Boston College Eagles twice this season, and then the overtime losses that John mentioned in Maryland and Stony Brook. So it will be very, very interesting to see how Syracuse matches up, because it feels like, except for those quote-unquote fluke losses to Maryland and Stony Brook, in the season, a team still kind of figuring out and slowly getting along.
Exactly.
It feels like this is a team that really is only going to get tested against Northwestern and Boston College.
Yeah, I mean, they are the foils. No question about it, especially BC in the last few years.
And John, I know you've written probably extensively about this already. What can Syracuse do? And what does Syracuse need to do after watching both of those BC games to try and solve the problem that is the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially after this last game, which turned into just a complete blowout, you worry about it being, the mental approach to facing them. I mean, that regular season matchup is a game that they should have won. They had the look they wanted to in overtime and just couldn't hit it. I think for the women against BC, it's just staying mentally composed and knowing like you can beat this team. The proof has been there in front of you this season. They have the tools to play with them and stay with them. It's a matter of I think offensively, crisp ball movement, and BC is so physical and aggressive and in your face. They play in a way that other teams don't. You're just not used to it. You're not used to playing against that aggressive style of defense. So it's maintaining the right offensive strategy, good ball movement, crisp ball movement, and knowing how to attack. For example, they weren't able to adjust to BC's BC's adjustments to them in the championship game after we got off to the hot start. They were attacking, not isoing enough, not doing clear out dodges and things of that nature. So it's the mental approach, and I think knowing how to punch back against them when they make their adjustments. That's been an issue for Kayla Trainer against her mentor in Keisha Walker. So learning from past mistakes. So we'll see. It's there in front of them, though. We know they can compete with this team physically. They've done it already. It's just being able to close it out. That's been the real issue.
Do we think there's a bit of a, I don't know if it's a strictly like roster to roster matchup problem there, because they've outside of Northwestern, who Cuse did play tight in the beginning of the season as well. Mm-hmm. They've beaten the other two teams that have taken BC down, and both in convincing manners.
Yep.
So like, is it just a squad versus squad matchup issue, or do we think that mental aspect has a good chunk to do with what's going on at present?
It is tough to say how much it is, because you wouldn't have thought that going into the ACC championship game, the way they played them the first time, how close it was. And I think everything you heard was like, they're going into this game wanting to end this 5-game losing streak. They're fired up about it. They also want to win that first ACC tournament title since 2015. And, they had it for about a half, and then it just completely blew up on them. So, I mean, it's probably more of a physical matchup issue. I mean, this BC team is extremely talented. They are, they may be the most deep. They may have the most talent and depth in the country, maybe even more than Northwestern. I mean, the transfers they brought in 4 All-American transfers to an already incredible roster coming off of last season. So the talent is superior pretty much anytime they step on the field. But it doesn't mean that Cuse can't stay with them, for sure.
So going through the bracket right now, revealing the 4-5 bottom part of the left bracket. How weird does it feel to see North Carolina be an unseeded team in the NCAA tournament? Just that for both lacrosse programs in UNC at Chapel Hill, just horrendous down years by their standards.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, especially for the women who have just been, basically close to a dynasty in recent years with what they did 2 years ago when they went undefeated, won the title. Yeah, very weird. They got crushed with injuries this year, the way that Syracuse has in some recent years. But yeah, that's a bizarre look for them. Could be matched up with Virginia in the second round as the seeded team.
We're waiting to see who. Yeah, we are waiting to see who the number 4 seed in the region that is going to be facing off against Virginia, who is the 5 seed, and that's something also that's played a factor in Syracuse's hands this season, is that they haven't had the injuries to the big hitters and the big players this season. Yeah, a couple of injury season-ending injuries, but they have been to freshmen and people who, while are nice depth pieces, aren't your Emma Tyrells and your Emma Wards and your Delaney Schweitzers of the world, your Katie Goodales of the world, Natalie Smiths of the world, your Olivia Adamsons of the world. Those ladies are not getting injured. And to have essentially a full strength lineup at full capacity right
Yeah.
now, essentially at full firing strength right now, is very, very good. The 4 seed is Maryland, so we are expecting Syracuse to be the 3 seed, especially with Virginia getting the 5. So all eyes point to the number 3 seed, which is most likely getting revealed last in this schedule. That's just our luck.
Yes, of course. But that you're right. Maryland getting the 4 there. That all likelihood. Virginia's already the 5. I mean, I can't really imagine a situation in which we're the 6th. So that probably locks it up. Which is good. That's the bracket that they just revealed. That's tough. You got North Carolina.
That's a stacked region.
Penn State beat Northwestern this year.
Exactly.
They're
that's
in
what I was
there.
going to say.
That's brutal. That's wow. Okay, so
that is an absolutely brutal region of that bracket.
That is, which I guess makes sense since it's the 4-5 region, but that's like, even by 4-5 standards, that's a lot. And they just went to commercial saying Boston College, Syracuse regions revealed. So
yes, Syracuse is a 3, Boston is the 2.
Little spoiler alert there from the broadcast, so that's good.
And that's that 4-hour road trip that.
well, luckily that was just the women's lacrosse A team of Jay Alter, she and Stan Stanwick, and I think Dana Boyle on there as well.
Yeah, Charlotte North, I think.
Charlotte North, excuse me. Yes, Charlotte North. So, they're giving Chris Carter, Quinn Kesnick, and Paul Carcaterra a little bit of an extra breather after driving 4+ hours across the back roads of New York to get to Bristol.
Oh man, yes, the back roads of New York and Connecticut. Goodness,
because as you guys know, it's impossible to find a great way to get to the highway from Ithaca, and especially if you're driving east, it gets even tougher to find a great road.
Yeah, that's. Oh man, I can't believe they'll be happy for a return to Columbia for the Ivy League tournament. If I don't know if that's on the cards for next year, but they'll be hoping for it. That's for sure.
Well, what they want is just Columbia to get. What they want is just Columbia to host, not host, but Columbia to have a men's team. So that they can restore ancient it to like full glory status.
Indeed.
And have all 8 teams, much like the ACC is fishing for a 6th team in some region, in some way, shape, or form to round out the men, and also finally get the auto bid, so that you actually don't see what you saw in the ACC tournament this weekend, because essentially the ACC tournament this weekend, it wasn't competitive. No. Every single game was done by the first quarter, but because of that, the losing team just rotated in all the backups.
Yeah.
So it shows you just how much the auto bid really, really helps to give these games some juice and meaning as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, today at the Duke Notre Dame game, they didn't take him out completely, but they were rotating Brennan O'Neill out for possession here and there, even in the first quarter when Notre Dame was up 5-0.
Exactly.
It was already happening because of exactly what you said. There's no reason to get your best player hurt playing in a game where you've already have at least the number 2 seed locked up. And Notre Dame was probably locked in 1 seed. So, I mean, it's unfortunate because you are playing for a trophy, and it's something that I would, I assume you care about to a certain extent. But, not having the auto bid does lead to situations like what we saw, and just a brutal tournament. Every game was a complete blowout, mostly courtesy of Notre Dame being just at least at the moment, a runaway favorite going into the tournament. They are just looking not just unstoppable, but untouchable at the moment.
It's so hard to decide how you defeat Notre Dame, because they just look so balanced on every single level of the game: attack, midfield, face-off, defense, and goalkeeper. It's just so hard to find a weakness in Notre Dame as a team right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then like on top of everything that you just mentioned, the way that they play the game is so unique. The physical relentlessness that they play with when you, as a defense, if you were able to knock a loose ball, get a stick on a ball or knock the ball loose, picking up a ground ball to actually get the turnover, picking up the ground ball at first, but then actually clearing against them is just a nightmare because the Kavanaugh brothers lead the way, and the way that they go after ground balls, the way that they ride is just completely and utterly relentless. And it just makes them it truly makes them a nightmare to play against.
Yep, my Cornell Big Red found that out essentially very much so the hard way.
Yes.
At the end of that game. We're back in the bracket reveal, and Syracuse has just been revealed as the number 3 seed, as we all expected. This is going to come with a bye in their first round, and they will face off against a second round opponent. Syracuse, of course, 3 national titles under Gary Gate, back now in the 3rd season under Kayla Trainer, of course, the most legendary players in all of college lacrosse. Let's take a look at who are the 2 teams they will face. It will maybe be Stony Brook.
Wow.
Oh, boy. Here we go. The very first team that's revealed to go up against Syracuse is the Stony Brook Sea Wolves, and Joe Spallina's ladies defeated the Orange in Central New York earlier this season in overtime. Oh, storylines.
Like you said earlier, as long as we don't go to overtime, we'll be fine.
That's right.
Of course, Stony Brook still has to play an opponent. It will be the Niagara Purple Eagles, so it will be a local New York matchup of some sort. Of course, Long Island not essentially not being in close proximity to upstate New York, but it will still be a New York matchup in the second round first for Syracuse. Either Stony Brook or Niagara, we're expecting it to be Stony Brook. This will be a great chance for us to reminisce in disdain, perhaps, about 2 months ago. What happened to Syracuse in that Stony Brook game, and how does the Orange overcome that?
Wow, that is a great question. I mean, certainly a big factor in that. I may have mentally blocked out certainly the end of that game. That's for sure. Because I think
I wouldn't blame you.
that was the women's second game of the year in overtime to lose, and at that point the men had at least 1, maybe 2. So I think, and they all came within like a few weeks of each other. So I think at that point I was like, all right, just turn it off and move on.
That was coming right off of the Maryland and Army games.
Yeah, they were all in short order, and it was just like, what is this? It's just
because Maryland, and then the next week or 2 weeks from that was Army, and then the week after that was Stony Brook.
It is a stacked Syracuse region of the bracket, because you have Stony Brook and Niagara, and then the other unranked matchup is Binghamton, and I believe it was Fairfield and Binghamton, and then it was Hopkins. It was Hopkins and Fairfield, and then the 6th seed is the Ivy champions in Yale, who I've gotten the pleasure to watch firsthand, being the play-by-play for Cornell women's lacrosse. I saw Yale absolutely decimate Cornell in the final regular season home game that Cornell played. That is a very, very good Yale Bulldogs team, and that is no easy game for Syracuse to play against the Yale Bulldogs and the Elis in that 6th seed.
So is this a function of the regional bracketing system?
Definitely partially a factor. For those who don't know, in lacrosse, regionality and travel considerations are taken into effect, as at least for the women's side, they do not go to neutral sites until the Final Four, if I'm correct, right, John?
Yes, correct.
The men will play the Elite Eight at either Long Island and Hempstead, I believe at Hofstra's Field, or in thousand,
Right.
depending on which area of the bracket they get seated up in. But
Exactly.
the first round sites on the men's side for the 8 first round games will be at campus sites. Because remember, also in the men's side, only 17 teams will make it into the tournament, with the final 16 seed being a play-in game against 2 of the lower-ranked conferences. I mean, when you look at Syracuse's quadrant of the bracket, that is really, really tough.
It is.
Large.
It is. I'm stunned to see Stony Brook there. I mean, I can't believe that they would have been that they would be matched up to play the 3 seed in the second round. It's a function of their strength of schedule. It has to be, because they finished 17-2, but they play a relatively weak schedule, despite having the good win over us. Yeah, that's an absolute shocker. And then Yale as well. So yeah, the road to BC is a little tougher perhaps than we thought. Yeah, that's going to be a fascinating matchup. One of those where we played Stony Brook early in the season. That's a storyline or a factor in terms of that was a Syracuse team before they started to figure it out offensively. That was,
and again, we're not discrediting Niagara's chances in that game, but at the same time, we sort of am, because given the historic nature of how the Stony Brook program under Joe Spallina has been coached in the past decade, I would say, like that is a program that has consistently been a top 10 program in the past decade or so.
Yeah, no question. Yes, Spallina's been fantastic, and they've been a tough out, no question. I think there was a couple years ago, it was back-to-back years, they played North Carolina in the quarterfinals, and they came this close to beating them both times. So they're a tough out. They already beat us this year, so we know that. No surprises there. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting given the matchup taking place 2 months later for a Syracuse team that I would say was definitely still figuring things out at the time. Offensively, at the draws too, I think that was still a time when Kate Mashesky was still getting her legs under her after coming back off her knee injury last year, and she could not be on any more fire than she is right now. It seems like she's getting above a dozen to about 15 draws in most of her games recently. So that could be a big factor. She only won 6 in the first game. Stony Brook won the draws 15-14 the first time around. So you're looking at a much stronger at this point Kate Mashesky and a much more in tune with each other offense, despite the performance in the last game against BC. So
if you're looking to visualize the bracket, indeed. Yeah. Mashevsky is going to be huge in that game. If you're looking to visualize the bracket in your head, Syracuse will essentially enter the bracket in the round of 16 stage, where they will face the winner of Stony Brook and Niagara. Their potential round of 8 opponent, again, most likely, just based on what we're seeing in the bracket, will most likely be the Yale Bulldogs, as Yale has to overcome the threesome of Binghamton, Fairfield, and Johns Hopkins, who shouldn't pose too much problem for the Elis, in my opinion. So
that could be interesting. I mean, I have not seen Yale play as you have, Christian, but Hopkins is definitely pretty good. They gave Northwestern a game in the Big Ten tournament, the semifinals, I think it was a couple days ago. That's interesting. Hopkins could be interesting, but
so something that's been kind of a highlight of the Ivies this year, especially the top Ivy teams, is it's just insanely good zone defense, and that will play into Syracuse's favors a little when those two teams match up, because obviously Syracuse plays zone defense as well. So, but like defensively, the Ivies have just been so good in zone defense, at least the top tier of the Ivies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's
going to be fast. Yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating to see how this women's team breaks out. Also, it'll be fascinating to see where this game gets played.
Yes. Oh boy, yes. I don't know. Soccer stadium, anyone? I don't know.
It will either be the soccer stadium or it will be CNS.
Let's see.
Yeah. I'm
They
curious.
did go with soccer both times last year for the regular season finale and the first game here, the first postseason game here.
That's right. Yeah, and a couple years ago they did as well. Yeah, the postseason seems like they've been going with the soccer stadium. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that Syracuse and Stony Brook, if it is, both play on turf. Both play most of their games on turf. So,
they have just announced it to be on Sunday at the SU Soccer Stadium.
Sunday.
And there we go.
Okay.
Just announced right now on the Syracuse women's lacrosse Twitter account.
Okay.
No time just set yet.
No time.
But the soccer stadium, assuming that's going to be a mid-afternoon game, just based on how the NCAA has scheduled these games in the past. You assume that's going to be a mid-afternoon game, but then you assume that the men's lacrosse game will be a nightcap of some sort.
Yep. That's assuming the men's game would be in the dome after graduation, that would put it at the 7:30 Sunday night where it's always had to have been because of graduation. So
we'll get a sneak peek of some new seats in the dome as they've started to put those in as well.
That's right.
Yes.
I like it.
Mike is very familiar with those new seats.
Oh, yes. I have sat in one of those new seats before, and I honestly, they've had them. This is going all the way back to the end of basketball season. They had like sample ones out in the backcourt. I think they're a little thin. This is just a me thing. I've never seen seats where the actual seat seems pretty thin, but like they feel pretty comfortable. So
there you go. Hopefully it's ready for football season.
Oh, I mean, of course, that is the dream that is ready for football season. Sadly, for every fan chagrin, there are no cup holders in the seats, so that's going to be really, really awkward.
Now that everything's been revealed for the women, before we get to halftime, I never realized how weird the championship schedule is, where it goes Friday to Sunday, like this coming Friday and then Sunday, and then Thursday, and your brain would be like, why don't we push that to the weekend for the elite?
Well, it's because with the women, they have that like weird like 48 teams, something like that that qualify for the NCAA tournament. I forgot the exact. Yeah, I forgot the exact number, but I know it's the
first three get a bye.
Yeah, it's the top three teams got a bye.
I think it's just 20. I think it's 29, isn't it? Because then
yes, that's what it is. It's 29.
Yeah, 29.
No, we've got those wires all calibrated correctly. You got 29 teams.
20,
for the women and 17 teams for the men. Hopefully, with more of these Division I programs now, either getting made or, as we've seen the recent trend, getting moved up from Division II. Hopefully, that creates a little bit more of an extension to the men's tournament soon. Because, boy, there are going to be some great teams. A little bit of bias incoming as well. There are going to be some great teams that are not making the men's tournament. Just based on there only being 8 at-large bids available.
Yeah, that's always been the thing with lacrosse, with only 8 at-larges. It definitely feels this year like it's more great talent getting left out because.
Essentially, this is everyone's preview for what the 12-team college football playoff is going to feel like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. The when Syracuse makes a run at like the 10-11 seed next year.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes, that's the one. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, what are you talking about? Like, of course. This is a top 10 program that's brewing inside and I almost said Carrier Dome. This is a top 10 team that's brewing in the JMA Wireless Dome.
The rest in peace Carrier Dome.
The rest in peace Carrier Dome with the plaque outside on what is it? Walnut? No, it's not Walnut. Whatever that street is. Irving.
Irving,
Oh,
yeah.
Irving, yeah.
Yes.
No.
And so the men's selection special is about to get underway. Before they do get underway, we'd like to thank our halftime sponsors of the Disloyal Idiots podcast, Home Field Apparel, your one-stop shop for all your throwback Syracuse and college sports lacrosse or college program needs. You can go use the code NOONS23 and NUNES23 at checkout for 10% off your very first purchase at homefieldapparel.com. Good to see Chris Cotter, Paul Carcaterra, Quickcast Nick looking fresh as daisies can be after making a very, very long drive from Ithaca to Bristol.
Well done, boys. That is what a day. My goodness,
That is a
Everybody
heck of a
take
day.
break.
That's a heck of a day for those three. I mean, after going very, very intense Ivy League championship game between Penn and Princeton. Shout outs to Princeton, mainly run by juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, essentially after basically a ton of their senior leadership left due to Ivy League graduation rules. Obviously, two of those Princeton transfers joining Syracuse this season in Jake Stevens and Sam English. They've got a total of 7 Princeton players are currently starters on other Division I men's lacrosse programs. And all 7 of those players will be playing in the NCAA tournament, which is just frankly amazing for a Princeton Tigers team who lost all of that and is now, again, if you're watching along on ESPN2, they're showing some of the highlights of the Ivy League championship. And just showing some of also the AAQ. Shout out to Will Manny's Utah Utes, who Syracuse played, was it last season or earlier this year? I completely forget.
Yeah.
Earlier this season, yeah.
It was earlier this season, yeah. Utah upsetting Jacksonville. I would say that's an upset in the A-Sun tournament to grab that AQ away from Jacksonville. And of course, the biggest upset of the weekend was Michigan winning the Big Ten. Once again, Michigan as the 4 seed in the Big Ten, winning the Big Ten tournament, stealing bids. That's a Michigan team that would have not made the NCAA tournament if they didn't win the Big Ten. And they've done it again for the second year in a row in the exact same fashion by being the 4 seed and winning the Big Ten.
So who was the 3 seed, the Big Ten?
The 3 seed, I believe, was Maryland.
Maryland
right?
got the bye. Maryland was 2, Penn State was 3.
And Hopkins was 1.
And Hopkins was 1, right.
Oh, I forget Hopkins.
Yeah, we forget that Hopkins is in the Big Ten because, of course, D3
Famous
school
Big
for
Ten.
every other, D3 for every other sport except lacrosse. Johns Hopkins.
Extremely well-known Big Ten member, Johns Hopkins. Yes.
Oh, I was going through my head. I'm like, well, I'm sure Penn State and Maryland were 2 of those.
Right.
Was number, okay,
Again, also horrific weekend for Ohio State because the Big Ten tournament was played at Ohio State's campus, and that is Michigan winning. And also Michigan knocked out Ohio State of the Big Ten tournament as well. So just horrific weekend for Ohio State lacrosse.
So you're saying it's been a really rough year for Ohio State fans?
Yeah, just horrific. Just you can't believe anything. I mean, it really should mean that Ohio State sends some players to Syracuse just as common sense. Syracuse will take Bobby Van Buren, by the way. We'll take him like in an instant, just so you know.
I'm sure Kyle can do some recruiting. Possibly pitch the Newhouse grad program to somebody else down there.
Like I said, give us Bobby Van Buren. He's good. I believe Bobby Van Buren also wears 44 at Ohio State. He was the Big Ten Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. Twice all Big Ten selection. Really, really good close D. But for Ohio State lacrosse, they're not making it to the NCAA tournament. It's going to be really, really interested to see who the at-larges are. We're not talking that much about Syracuse because, as we mentioned, for the first time in quite some time, Syracuse is making it into the NCAA tournament. They're just going to show the seeded teams right now. And again, regionality is important as to who their opponents are going to be in lacrosse. No surprise for Notre Dame being the first seed. We're expecting Syracuse to receive a top 4 seed. Duke, no surprise, getting the 2nd seed in the NCAA tournament with a 12-5 record. Notre Dame with a 12-1 record. Awaiting the reveal for the 3 and 4 seeds now coming up. It'll be Johns Hopkins who receives the 3 seed. Some really, really solid wins for Johns Hopkins. That's what we're expecting. And then again, the expectation is that Syracuse should get this 4 seed that is coming up on our screens very, very shortly. And it is Syracuse at the number 4 seed. So a top 4 seed for the Syracuse Orange, that's got to feel very, very good for Gary Gain and his 3rd program. Given the state of where the program was when he took over, that's got to feel very, very good. And just his 3rd year to kind of revitalize the program back to the heights that it knows it should be.
100%. It's they took a big leap this year, and it's just been an upward trajectory from his first season. Last year was a nice turnaround, and this year was like the big leap forward, and earning a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament back for the first time in 3 years. Yeah, it's been a great year, and now we're looking forward to the mayhem.
We will indeed look for the mayhem of who Syracuse faces as essentially the 13th seed in the NCAA tournament, although the teams that are not in the top 8 are not seeded. That's also mainly because of the regionality factor of the tournament. Denver gets the 5 seed. Surprisingly, Virginia does get the 6 seed, so placing Virginia a little bit more down than I think teams would expect. I think the big shocker, and I think something that I would love to see the NCAA do, is to not give Maryland a seed, because Maryland has not had a good end to the season, and Maryland just does not look good right now. It will be very.
I think I looked at it yesterday. They're still sitting. They're like 8-ish.
Yeah, no, they were sitting 7 in the RPI, and they have just received the 7th seed in the tournament.
Yeah.
But you take a look at a really, really weird 8-5 record for Maryland. They have not had a great end to the season for the Terps. Definitely not.
Are they going chalk on RPI here? Or?
Yes, because the NCAA lacrosse seeding is really based on the RPI.
Yeah.
That's one of the first main. That's one of the first main factors that is decided with the selection committee is the RPI. So kind of like how the net is used for basketball, the RPI is used for lacrosse.
So at the beginning of the season, every sport just says, all right, this is the arbitrary metric we're going to use, and there we are.
The NCAA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately, yes.
You expected logic to factor into this decision.
Certainly not.
I'm not sure if I missed it or not, but I don't think they revealed the 8th seed, which is very interesting.
I saw it.
I'm watching
Georgetown.
It was Georgetown. Okay, so the Big East champions, Georgetown, baking.
Christian, like you said, you didn't miss anything.
Okay, so they actually did just miss it in the broadcast, or is it
that was a Georgetown joke,
or is it just the time being 9:39 right now on the Eastern Seaboard? You know what follows that sentence.
And Georgetown still sucks.
There we go. Why did you steal Tucker Dordevic from us? Okay. Yeah. we will find out. ESPN has gone to commercial break. We will find out who makes the blanking on words right now, who makes the tournament in terms of matchups as well. By my count there, that is only one automatic qualifier seated in the top 8, that being the Georgetown Hoyas. So that
sport.
Yeah, which means
that's right.
Means that 7 of the 8 at-large bids have been taken. So there is only one. So the last team that you see, there will only be one team that is a non-seeded team that is not an automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And so right now the committee from what we can tell, is deciding between Penn State, Penn, and Cornell as the last team to make it into the NCAA tournament.
Listen, after the Big Ten championship, Penn State does not deserve to get in. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I would. You can very well make that argument, but Penn State's had some good wins this season. Same with same with also Penn and Cornell. Just based on RPI's feeling, I think it's going to be it's going to be tough. It's going to be Penn State or Penn. As much as I want Cornell to make it, and I don't think it's going to be Cornell. It's going to be Penn State or Penn. That's sort of really unfortunate thing for that was sort of really unfortunate thing with how the tournaments went this weekend. Georgetown and Michigan winning their respective championships stole bids, and that really threw a wrench in the plans of some of these teams that thought they were comfortable as at-large bids, like Penn State, Penn, and Cornell, who coming into this weekend probably thought they had some pretty good chances to make it into the dance.
Absolutely,
and honestly, throw Yale in there as well.
Yale,
because Yale's had a fantastic season, especially considering how injured the hell Yale has been, losing two of their top attackers alongside Matt Brandow and still having the top-ranked offense in the entire NCAA. It's just a testament to how well Andy Shea, has built that program.
Yep, absolutely. But
sorry.
No, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, in the regional things that make no sense, similar to our Big Ten discussion, I was racking my brain trying to figure out who Georgetown beat in the Big East tournament, realizing not that Nova was the team that could have gotten in, but who got knocked out earlier in the week?
Denver.
Who, of course, is the Big East.
Traditional Big East powerhouse, the Denver Pioneers. How has Syracuse not played Denver yet in the regular season? Like, this is still a fascinating subject to me. Like, Syracuse needs to get Denver on the schedule somehow.
Syracuse needs to get an away game at Denver for more recruiting stuff out there.
That is true, because Colorado is now shooting up there in as a lacrosse hotbed.
In lacrosse, yes, absolutely.
I mean, just the way they set it up with they played Utah this year. I imagine they try to get another West Coast opponent next year.
Yeah, once Stanford had some men's lacrosse program
in the Big East.
Yes, to be the 6th ACC.
Before we figure out who Syracuse is playing in the NCAA tournament, there are a couple of programs who are in contention to be that 6th ACC team. With Stanford coming on, that's a big shout. But you also have Virginia Tech, Boston College, Clemson, who most likely should in the near future add a men's lacrosse to make the ACC an even 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good argument for BC. I think they would be high up on the list, given that they used to have a varsity program and no longer. So BC would be high on that list. I mean, Clemson seems to always be a candidate for anything new sport-wise. But
now Clemson did just get the women's lacrosse specific facility.
Yeah.
So to me, I imagine that actually pushes them down a little bit.
Probably. I mean, it's amazing. At the club level, a lot of the ACC teams are like among the best in the country. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech.
Exactly. Yeah. Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech are very, very good at the MCLA, that like unofficial official club, like the varsity program. It's going to be very interesting right now. ESPN is showing who Georgetown is playing as the quote unquote 9 seed. If this is a at large or a tournament qualifier, it's Penn State. So Penn State rounds out the at larges. Penn and Cornell miss out on the NCAA tournament. The first round matchup that got prevailed for Notre Dame is UAlbany or Sacred Heart. That is a very, very interesting matchup as well for Notre Dame to face off against Jake Pacino and Albany against a red hot Sacred Heart team.
Yeah, that'll be fun. One of the most interesting men in all of college lacrosse for Albany, and an exciting story in Sacred Heart. And
Is it Sacred Heart or St. Joe's that has 12 straight wins? I believe it's Sacred Heart, right?
St. Joe's has won. St. Joe's. St.
Oh,
Joe's.
St. Joe's.
12 in a row. St. Joe's lost their first 3 games of the season and has now won 12 in a row. So that's a potential one
that
of
is
the
a potential
first round. St. Joe's is a potential matchup for Syracuse, which we're about to find out in a few seconds, and that would be tough. St. Joe's is legit. So
St. Joe's is a very good seed. Syracuse opponent is about to get revealed as they reveal Denver's opponent first. Denver will face off against the Big Ten champs in Michigan. That is a spicy matchup.
Yes.
So if Syracuse moves on, they will face the winner of this Denver-Michigan matchup. That will be a very, very interesting one. Finally, Syracuse might get to play Denver, which will
be possible. Yep.
Yeah.
Although the way Michigan looks this weekend, my goodness.
Yeah, but again, we'll see. But holy moly.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's tough because so many of these at-large teams are coming off losses, and so many, obviously, of the AQ teams are coming off red-hot winning streaks. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how the mentality of all these programs shifts. Syracuse's opponent is about to get revealed here on ESPN2. They are taking on the Towson Tigers, the Colonial Athletic Association champions. This was supposed to be Delaware, but Delaware had an awful CAA tournament, and that gave the CAA bid to the Towson Tigers. Do not show what happened in 2017 between these two teams.
Yes, please.
Please.
Yes. Yeah, weird revenge game for Syracuse against Towson, kind of, from 7 years ago.
Do not show Evan Malloy at Turnrake 13 on Twitter, but that one clip of
yes,
that,
please,
because
please.
It was the year that Townsend had that 2-headed monster in SSTM, and one of those guys just destroyed a top corner to its ever living pixel, and it was just disgusting to see.
Yeah.
If I recall how the bracket works out as well, I believe that also puts Syracuse in the Elite Eight matchup. That game, ironically, is at Towson.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's right. Is that the side of the bracket we're in? Do we know that already?
Because I believe it's the 1-8 matchup and the 3-6 matchups are the ones going to Long Island.
Okay.
And I believe it's the 4-5. I forget if it's Long Island or if it's Hofstra. One of those two New York campuses is getting I believe it's Hofstra.
Usually Hofstra. Yeah.
So it's the 1-8 and 3-6 matchups are going to Hofstra for the Elite Eight, and then the 4-5-2-7 matchups are, I believe, going to Towson. To play in their Elite Eight matchup, and St. Joe's is going up against the 6th seed. Who is God? I forgot who the 6th seed was already. Virginia. That's a good matchup as well because Virginia also isn't looking hot heading into this tournament.
Very interesting. Yes.
That has a first round upset written all over it.
That'll probably be the hot pick for a first round upset, given that Virginia's lost 4 games in a row and St. Joe's has won 12 games in a row.
How weird is it that Virginia?
Of course, be careful since those 4 losses for Virginia are against Syracuse, Duke, and Notre Dame.
And of course, Virginia's last win coming because Matthew Noon scored a goal.
All right, if I can be the one to break this one, the men's game will be in the Dome Sunday at 7:30.
Yep, that's kind of what we expect.
Okay, all right. So that's the usual. That is the usual. Good. Postseason lacrosse back in the Dome for the men.
That just feels good to say. Really honest.
So, like Mike just mentioned, though, why are the men playing in the Dome and the women not?
Well, because they're all playing on Sunday, and there's a small problem of graduation happening Sunday morning, and as good as the Dome turnaround crew, is, I don't think they're that good.
No.
Yes, there's only going to be a couple of thousand shares they have to move, starting at about 12:30. So
Not to mention like a huge stage they have to break down as well.
there is that too, and yeah.
To round out the bracket, Maryland is playing Princeton and Duke is playing Utah. That Maryland Princeton game is going to be very, very good as well to watch.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
those are your prime upset potential games to be Maryland Princeton and Virginia St. Joe's. Let's focus on Syracuse's quadrant of the bracket. Once again, it is Cuse taking on, first of all, the Towson Tigers, who are the CAA champions, and they will face the winner of Denver, Michigan. It feels like Syracuse should handle Towson no problem, unless I'm severely mistaken.
I think that's going to be the expectation. Towson's they've been another team that's hot. I believe they've won 9 games in a row. So
yes,
it'll.
This is so funny just looking at the selection tournament. First 3 teams out in the NCAA tournament, all Ivy League: Penn, Cornell, and Yale. And Quint Clark and Cotter were all talking about this on the broadcast of that Ivy League tournament. The Ivy League is going to come back with an absolute vengeance next year, especially since there's so much returning talent coming back to the Ivy League. Like the only big name that's like not returning to the Ivy League is Matt Brandow, but then you still have the rest of the injured Yale attack that's coming back. And most of the remaining core of that Yale team, they are going to be very, very, very angry. The entire Ivy.
Yes, they will. Yep. Cornell.
And then it's just the tricky part of getting back to Memorial Day weekend. Mike, you'll like this if you've got a little bit of time. Because it will be relatively close to you. Memorial Day weekend, the Final Four championship weekend, will be at Lincoln Financial Field.
I will see if I can make the trip down there, and hopefully I will have a reason to make the trip down.
Indeed. Syracuse again hasn't made it back to Memorial Day weekend since the championship loss in 2013, I believe, right?
Yeah, yep, that's right. Yep, 2013. Haven't won a tournament game at all since 2017. And haven't made it to the Final Four since 2013. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to be erased, hopefully in the near future.
It's just fun that we actually get to talk about Syracuse lacrosse postseason for once.
Yeah.
At least on the men's side. Obviously, we've talked about it for years upon years on the women's side. But on the men's side, God, it feels good to finally talk about that again.
Big time. Yes. It's been feeling a lot like old times this year in a number of games. Some of those big wins, the Virginia game, the Hopkins game, it felt it's been back to feeling like old times, which has been extremely exciting. And yeah, now talking NCAA tournament again. It's a beautiful thing.
Of course, John didn't mention the Cornell game, but we don't have to mention that.
That too. Yeah. Without question, yes. The Cornell game was feeling very reminiscent to the 2009 Cornell game, complete with that last second goal to send it to overtime. But just not the fun side of old times on that night.
I mean, it was fun for me. I don't know about for you guys, but it was
fair. Fun result, I should say. Yeah.
I can't comprehend being on the call on that, though. Bravo on that.
Yeah. How do you think I felt?
Yes, indeed. Bravo, indeed.
So the thing we also want to mention about with this Michigan team, who the ESPN broadcast is talking about right now, this is a Michigan team that also, like last year, had to win the Big Ten to get in won the Big Ten as the 4 seed in the Big Ten, and then subsequently beat their first round opponent, who happened to be Cornell, in the first round. So even though Denver should come in as a favorite for this game, do not discount the Wolverines, because that they could very easily upset Denver, who is coming off that loss to Georgetown in the Big East tournament as well. But of course, Syracuse can't look too far as well, because they still have to take on Towson first.
They do, yes. But yeah, Michigan, that's going to be another popular upset pick, I think. Just the way Michigan looked at the Big Ten tournament this week. Denver lost to Villanova in the semis of the Big East tournament.
Villanova, yeah, not Georgetown.
Oh, yeah, Villanova, yeah. So, I think that's going to be another very popular pick, the way that Michigan looked. I mean, especially just absolutely dismantling Penn State yesterday. The way that they looked, that was scary good yesterday. So that's I mean, that's a potential. Michigan is a team that I would not be thrilled to see if they're able to get by Denver.
Tim Leonard, the voice of the Syracuse men's lacrosse program on radio, just tweeted out also an interesting tidbit about Towson. Towson is the number 1 scoring defense, and they're going up against a top 5 scoring offense in Syracuse.
Okay, so there you go, right off the bat. Not looking past Towson. I mean, I have to be honest. I haven't really seen much of Towson this year to actually comment on the defense.
Me too, because also that's another one of those bid stealers. Towson was expected to be expected to be Delaware, who made it past the CAA tournament, and Delaware couldn't get past Towson.
They took over. They beat them twice at the end of the season. I think the last game of the regular season, and then the conference championship game. So they just kind of took over. Towson did. So we let's see here. Yeah, I mean it's a hot team. A lot of these auto qualifiers are on big winning streaks coming into the NCAA tournament, and momentum can be a real thing. So we shall see.
It is going to be a very, very fun NCAA tournament to call. You can imagine that John and I will be very, very busy getting head deep into how Syracuse fares on both the men's and the women's side on Sunday in their respective tournaments. Of course, with the men, you kind of expect them to get past Townsend, but as we've mentioned between John and I, Syracuse has at times not fared well against teams that they should have beaten, C. Bryant and Army as 15 seeds in the NCAA tournament before.
Yep.
And of course, with the women, you've got that highly, highly anticipated matchup against Stony Brook that the Syracuse women should be coming up against if Stony Brook can get past Niagara.
Likely, yeah, most likely. Yeah, we're gonna have some interesting times here coming up this weekend and hopefully beyond.
This is going to be fun to kind of sit down and get into the teeth of as the week progresses with both of these programs. That should about do it at least for us here on the Disloyal Idiots podcast. We kind of covered the entirety of the lacrosse selection show, kind of what we're expecting to do here today. If you're looking for your regularly scheduled football /Fram Brow update / basketball transfer portal update, those will most likely come next week. Hopefully we'll have a returning Andy Pregler to also kind of sit down and digest his reaction to what the hell happened with Fran Brown and his program over the past month, because boy, has he had a lot to catch up on. As Steve starts the process, wait a minute, has it really been only just a month and this is how much Fran Brown has done?
No, it's every time I think about it, it's just anybody who's thinking about it, go back a week and a half to the piece I put out, and just this whole thing feels different, and I'm glad we're on this ride. it's good to see that the lacrosse programs are also there on the ride with us. And we'll go from there.
Yeah, Steve, might get final thoughts on how on Syracuse's draws in the NCAA tournament.
I'm sorry. Did you say?
I said Steve and Mike just before I get to John, because I want to see if the two non-lacrosse guys got anything any interesting.
Offensive line, I have no deep input.
Just ignore the fact that Syracuse has a guy who's trying to do his best Jordan Faison impression coming to Syracuse in the fall.
Yeah.
Yes, I thank you for reminding me to write that up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, Syracuse has a walk-on quarterback that is joining their roster, but is also a top 50 player in Inside Lacrosse's latest class as a defenseman who is joining Syracuse as well. That'll be very, very fun to see. John, let's end it off with you. Your final thoughts on Syracuse's two draws in the upcoming NCAA tournament.
Certainly very interesting. I think the women expectedly get the 3. I mean, we expected 3 or 4 for both. Little disappointed to see the men get the 4. Hopkins had the better RPI, but everything else kind of tilted towards Syracuse, including the head-to-head win. But this seemed to be a committee that, as Steve said earlier, was pretty much going chalk more or less on RPI. But very exciting. Top 4 for both. Interesting draws too. Likely Stony Brook for the women. If the men can get by Towson, then either way, Denver or Michigan. Interesting matchups, new opponents. We'll see. I mean, I think for the women, I like the chances for getting back to a likely rematch with BC at the Final Four and seeing if they can end that 6-game losing streak. And for the men, I'm hoping that the performance 2 days ago can motivate after coming out so flat and rusty and just bad after so much time off. Expect them to beat Towson, and then it's going to be a good game. I'm falling into the trap of recency bias. I'm thinking Michigan over Denver, and that should be quite a game. But I think they have a very real chance to get back to the Final Four this year for the first time in 11 years.
And if they do get back to the Final Four, the most likely opponent that Syracuse will face off in Philadelphia first will be the number 1 ranked Fighting Irish, the outright favorite for this year's NCAA tournament, and an outright favorite to go back-to-back. We could see an NCAA lacrosse championship where we have 2 back-to-back national champions in Northwestern and Notre Dame, because both programs just look so good. But of course, Syracuse is looking to spoil both of those parties, and it is good to see postseason lacrosse back in full swing for both the men's and women's lacrosse programs. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. I'd like to thank Steve and Mike for joining us, and as well in spirit, Andy Pregler, wherever he may be in the world in his travelers. John, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. And of course, you can go read his work on our sister site, newsmagician.com.
Thank you so much, boys. A pleasure to be with you.
It is indeed always a pleasure. If you're watching, we usually run these Sundays at 8 p.m. on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube. Just search up Disloyal Idiots. You should find us there on your streaming platform of choice. If you're watching along on the website, thank you as always for watching on newsmagician.com, and check out some of our latest past podcasts and, of course, some of John's materials as he will be previewing, of course, in earnest, the upcoming weekend that Syracuse has to offer when taking on either Stony Brook Niagara in the women's side and taking on Towson on the men's side. If you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, thank you as always for listening. Be sure to rate, review, like, subscribe, leave a comment so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Should be fun next week either way to preview what we hope are 2 Syracuse wins and preview their Elite 8 matchups coming up in the NCAA tournament. But alongside Steve, Mike, and John, I'm Christian de Guzman. Thank you so much for listening to the Disloyal Idiots podcast on the Fans First Sports Network. And as always, go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.